Say we're a whiskey channel, right?
That's right.
So I thought we would talk about the future of whiskey in 2021.
Because it's confused.
Kind of like your hair today.
In Scandinavian, damn it.
Oh, this is Scandinavian?
Yeah, it's like my battle war dress thing.
I don't feel like I'm getting battle war dress here. More like getting battle worn, but maybe not.
Hey, don't judge a book by its covers, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I thought we talked about the future of whiskey today, 2021.
Oh, yeah, you mean like, you know, like getting a psychic on board?
Yeah. You have grim?
No, psychics. More like, you know, talk about things that are happening in general in whiskey.
General. Oh, you mean like gathering an army as a general with my war hair?
No.
Going in with my whiskey warriors. Breaking them up.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
No, man, more like trends we're seeing in whiskey and whiskey regions that are starting up and things like that.
Oh, you're being serious.
Yeah, I'm being serious.
Okay, yeah.
So, future whiskey 2021?
That sounds great. Let's do it. Right after this.
Right after this.
You too can join the army of the Whiskey Poppers. We are selling some t-shirts and a few lucky people will be actually gifted.
That's right. So right now what we need you guys to do is like our videos, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and then share that video with #WhiskeyPop. We will add you into a drawing to win one of the free shirts. In a few weeks, we will draw names for our winners.
That's right.
So we're gonna try to give away 10 shirts. So there's a lot of opportunity here for you to win a shirt. So remember, like, subscribe, and share with 2 people. Make sure you put the #WhiskeyPop in there and we will add you into the drawing for a free shirt.
Yep.
Welcome to Whiskey Pop. My name's Jeff.
And I'm Zane.
Oh, look, your hair is more warrior-ish.
Yeah, we worked on some
More
things.
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok.
Okay, so today we're gonna talk about the future of whiskey.
That's right.
I mean, there's like finished whiskeys, craft whiskeys,
Yeah.
blended whiskeys.
The new American Scotch whiskey.
Yeah, that's right.
The single malt.
Right? Experimental rye whiskeys.
Yep.
Hell, I even saw a quinoa whiskey the other day.
Now you're just lying.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
I'll buy it. We'll review it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, we'll do it.
Because
But-
I don't know about that.
But there's a lot of new trends coming up, and I thought
Yeah,
we'd
for sure.
talk about those trends a little bit and what that might mean for future whiskeys this year, even.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that,
We got some new to try.
there's got to be a reason why we have Thor's hammer here.
Well, it's his axe. It's Stormbreaker.
Stormbreaker, but it's a mini Stormbreaker.
It is a mini Stormbreaker, that's for sure. But what are we talking about today, Jeffrey?
I think this is Roknar,
This is Roknar.
which means I think warrior god or god of warriors, warrior
What is
of
that?
gods.
Is that Scandinavian?
It's Scandinavian. Hence the hair thing, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't very Scandinavian earlier. More
I say-
scary-navian.
I say we open this, get a little sniffage, and then let's talk about the future of
what are
whiskey.
you waiting on? Let's open this thing.
There's so much just to keep up with all the new things that are happening in whiskey.
That's right.
I'm interested in smelling some new whiskey and possibly tasting some new whiskey. We can do this right now.
Let's do that right now. Holy shit.
He's having a moment. See, I'm going to tell you straight up, and I'm not going to go into reviews, but
I'm gonna try not
there
to.
is almost like a caramely popcorny thing going on right there,
Yeah. Let's,
as well as some other nuance.
all right, let's go. The thing I'm gonna say, nose doesn't match the palate.
Bro,
You will know more about Roknar this Friday.
On our second pour.
In the meantime, we're going to talk about the future of whiskey in 2021.
Right. It's gotten crazy.
Oh, it's really crazy. You know, we're in the middle of a major whiskey boom.
Yeah, of course, everywhere.
It's not just bourbon, it's everything.
It's as we were discussing, it's grown 20% in 40 years.
Yeah, so back in 1980, it was 106 distilleries in the United States. Today, there's over 2,000.
Well, my math that seems to be way more than 20%, but that's about right.
Well, 100 times 20.
Math.
It's 20 times.
Education.
It's 20 times.
That's right.
We'll try it again. So
it's weird how 20% is actually like when you take 100 or so and multiply it up to 1,000 and do the dangle flopper.
Hang on, let's
carry your 7.
Let's pull the chalkboard over. So you carry the 2 and the 1, and you take the 100 and times it by 20, and that means 20 times. That makes 2,000.
Oh, so you mean to tell me that we've grown in like 20%?
No, 20 times.
The industry's grown like 20 times since 1980. That's 40 years, and it's grown exponentially.
That much, and that's how popular whiskey is right now.
Which is crazy.
So, like, let's talk about some of those things that are happening.
Yeah.
So we talked about it recently, American single malt.
Oh yeah, which is a big deal.
It's a huge deal, and there's even, they're trying to push for legislation in the United States to make American single malt have these set of rules it has to follow.
Right, there's an organization called the AWMLMAL.
The ASMWC.
And they're trying to get the legislation to regulate or to say this is what an American single malt is.
That's right. Just like we have said, this is what bourbon is, this is what American single malt is. So they're trying to push that right now because there's a lot of producers coming online with American single malt, and there's not really they're following rules. There's nothing requiring them to follow
But the main thing is they're already trying to organize so that they can all be comparable and actually have that niche carved out for themselves because they're trying to do it.
That's right.
Almost as a group.
Yeah, they're just really trying to legitimize this category because right now
they know who they're competing against. They're competing against Japan, Ireland, Scotland.
Not to mention the bourbon market in the United States,
not just counting
Canadian whiskey market above them. So they're really trying to legitimize this subcategory of whiskey.
Yeah, and which we've already found that I like single malt. American single malt.
I like American single malt quite a bit.
Yeah, so
it is that happy medium of Scotch and bourbon.
It's beautiful.
So now
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. Oh well, I'll just ask this gent in the fancy knickerbockers. I beg your pardon.
One of the other things we're starting to see is, think about this, Kentucky and Tennessee have been predominantly the whiskey regions, bourbon regions of the United States.
That was it, and now that's started to grow.
We're starting to see in Texas and Ohio, Indiana, Colorado, and so we are now starting to see whiskey regions be a legitimate thing.
Yeah, not just states though, but we're talking about other
like
larger geographic regions.
Yeah, like the Pacific Northwest and on the Southwest. But think about it, people used to go to the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky.
Yeah.
There are people talking this year that they're going to go to the Texas Bourbon Trail.
Well, yeah, you've got great distilleries there. You've got Garrison Brothers.
You got Balcones.
Yeah, so I mean, I could do one of those trips, and
they're producing phenomenal whiskey down there.
Yeah, it's not just like
you're not just getting like some crappy whiskey and some small craft distilleries. These are legitimate distilleries. This is a regional whiskey.
Right. Well,
think about this. Roknar is a good example. This is a Minnesota whiskey. It's a small batch, small distillery. They are distilling their own stuff, and I can't wait to talk about that.
Which will be Friday.
On second pour, because we're not talking about...
That's where we prove we're experts.
We're not experts.
By reading on the internet.
But no, it's true.
Yeah.
The states are continually opening up new distilleries. I think there's at least 2 distilleries, 1 or 2 distilleries per city in the United States. It's getting so crazy.
Wow. Well, I mean...
Now, we're not talking about every little small town.
You're talking about the big ones.
Big cities have a distillery, which was unheard of back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, whiskey was dying.
Yeah, it was snuffing out. Everything was going to gin and vodka and all those, yeah.
And then the whiskey hipsters showed up. Thank you, whiskey hipsters, you did one thing right. I know, right?
I mean, this is interesting.
So, one thing we've been wanting to talk about, now this gets really sciencey.
Or is it just geeky?
It's both, and we're not really sciencey people, or are we?
I
Kind of are, right?
actually, yeah.
I mean, you are a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, well, not just because of that. It's just
Okay, so for the last...
I have a Bachelor of Science. I mean, it's true.
That even made David laugh.
It's true.
Recreational sports.
Physical education.
What was your grade point average in that? Oh, well, you know, every school's got them.
There's gotta be a way in here. I gotta get. Nice doggy, cute little pooch. Maybe I got a milk bone.
So, the University of Oregon State University, right, did a study with Waterford Distillery
Oh, okay.
to see if there's something that what we normally see only in the French wine side of things called terroir. Which basically, terroir is French for the soil, the water, the grain coming from that region. So
Right.
you know how wines have their own general regions. So like
How much it had rained a particular year to not.
Exactly
and all
right. So
those
like
things,
just like
yeah.
California vineyards, right? You
Sure.
know, everybody talks about get wine from the California vineyards. You get wine from this regions of France. You
Yeah.
know, so it's the same kind of deal. So they're saying whiskey has that same thing. So this university's been doing a study, and guess what they found out? It's true.
It is true.
There is terroir in whiskey. So now we're starting to see producers talking about how the grain that they produce, even in something like this Roknar, they're talking about the grain that they specifically produce
Right.
makes the taste of this whiskey.
It's no longer just, well, we need to get some rye, or need to get some barley. It's, we need to get rye from
That's right.
this farmer in the eastern portion of Kansas, mixed with our corn out of Ohio to produce what we're getting here.
And that's right. And then on top of that,
Yeah.
even the temperature and the way it's stored, and think about it. Do you think that whiskey that's made in like Colorado is going to taste the same as whiskey made in the hottest summer of Kentucky?
No, of course not. I mean,
There's no way, right?
no, there's no way.
And so they know these things, and it's starting to show up. And now producers of distilleries are starting to market that way. They're marketing the terroir of their whiskey. I mean, how many times do you go to a website and they're talking about not just the whiskey and the grain, they're talking about the water they're putting
Oh,
in
sure.
the
yeah.
barrel when they
But
mix it.
that's been the Tennessee shtick the whole time.
Right. The
I mean,
natural spring water.
Yeah,
kind of.
that's been the thing.
Scotland does it too, though.
Yeah.
They talk about these old ancient waterways that they use to make their whiskey.
And we talk about things like, you know, the special oak casks out of Japan.
Look at Mizunara, right?
And then they ship them around on the ocean because
the oceans are salty and briny.
And it changes those flavors.
So terroir makes a lot of sense. So even like the soil that the grain was grown in, the temperatures that they were grown in. I mean, we talk about how certain rick houses produce different flavors of whiskey. Now they're talking about how the grain does it, the water does it, the temperature does it. So many things. And I think this is becoming something you're going to hear a lot more about this year and ongoing in future whiskey.
It means that the craft is getting that much more refined. And the more refined it gets means the better for the end user as far as our individual experience is going to be.
When we think about, like in bourbon in general, we talked about this recently, well, further back, we talked about the history of bourbon.
Yeah.
We've gone from a moment in time where they were just kind of throwing some shit together.
Yeah.
Throwing some sawdust and tobacco juice and whatever they could to sell it to you.
Right.
And now we're in an age where we're talking about how whiskey tastes different based on the ground the grain was grown in. Or the temperature that it was raised in, you know, and produced in. I mean,
let alone stuff like age or whatever.
Exactly. We're not even getting into non-age and age statement stuff, which that brings up our next statement though.
Jella boom.
Boom, yeah. I understand boom.
Bada boom.
Big. Yeah, big bada boom.
Big. Bada big boom. Big.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, big bada boom.
The bourbon boom.
Oh, the bourbon boom itself, which we are living in.
We are living in the middle of a bourbon boom, and it's 2021, and it has continued to grow and grow and grow more and more. I mean, you guys know this. You go out and you're chasing unicorns.
Yeah.
You're chasing new whiskeys that are hard to find. Let's say like Smoke Wagon.
Right.
You know, everybody wants to try to get Smoke Wagon right now. It's flying off the shelf. There was even a recent thing where the owner of Smoke Wagon gifted a really rare bottle. That person gave it to a friend. They sold it in the aftermarket for an obscene amount of money. And they're even like throwing a fit over the fact that we're never gonna let our stuff be sold in the aftermarket again. I'm like, I don't know how you control that.
Yeah,
but that's where we've gone. That's how bad the bourbon boom is.
Well, right, which leads to the age statement. We have the ideas in the past that, you know, you have to have certain ages put on the whiskeys, but actually what we're seeing now, we got whiskey that's coming out that I'm gonna say is really a bourbon, but hey, it can't be called a bourbon because it's only in there for 15 months
That's
or
right.
9 months or 6 months.
This Roknar is a good example. Again, it's a 15-month aged whiskey.
Right.
So it's not even 2 years, so it doesn't really account itself as a bourbon, but it's not selling itself off as a bourbon, but it's really good whiskey.
Yeah, it's really good. And that's also part of this boom is now that crafters don't have to wait a crazy amount of time.
Yeah, they can just produce whiskey like this, right?
And that means it's coming to market, and if it hasn't come yet, it's coming soon.
And that is the plus side. So supply and demand is starting to ease up a little bit because we're seeing a ton more of these crafters come online and produce new whiskeys. We're seeing them on the shelves, and it's allowing the larger producers the time they need to catch up with the demand of this bourbon.
Right,
boom.
so when it finally does run out on the shelf,
People are still going to be running out and buying.
but it's going to come back pretty quick comparatively because you're going to have the stock available.
An example, let's say you go out and you find a bottle of Weller 12. You're like, oh my God, and you buy it. And then Weller 12 doesn't show up on the shelf again for 6 months. We're going to start seeing that kind of stuff show back on the shelf a lot faster.
Yeah.
And it'll show up on the shelf.
Because I'm looking forward to the day that I can get a Weller 12 and drink it, knowing I'm going to go get another bottle of Weller 12.
Now,
That's what I mean.
I don't think the demand is getting ready to change.
Not
But
demand.
we're saying that the supply might start to
it's
slowly
the
start
supply.
to just catch up because of all the craft distilleries kind of easing the burden. But here's the thing, a lot of these craft distilleries are growing at a substantial rate. So, I mean, we're seeing these craft distilleries easing up the demand a little bit. We're gonna start seeing supplies come back. We're already starting to see some bottles that we hadn't seen in a while start to show up a little more often. These things are gonna start to ease up this year and then into next year, but I think the future of whiskey is so wide open, way more than we've ever seen it.
For sure.
I mean, if our grandparents came in, these old whiskey drinkers, and they could look at it today, they'd just be like, holy crap.
Yeah, the options are endless. I mean, whiskey is starting to fill shelves in a lot of places very similar to their wine selection.
You know, think about it. You're starting to see liquor stores open up, and they're a whiskey store.
Yeah, not a whiskey, not a wine store that has a whiskey corner.
Yeah, they're a wine corner in a whiskey store.
Yeah.
Basically,
So-
it's just all whiskey. And so you're starting to see those things. And you're seeing cocktails become a really big deal right now. I mean, the hipster market has really pushed the whiskey cocktail, and that's a big market. It's changing things.
You mean the only way to drink whiskey is not neat?
There are other ways to drink whiskey. We've talked about this.
And if you want to see that talk, I don't really care.
So, have you guys had Roknar? Is that something you've had recently?
And if you haven't, have you even seen it? Honestly, I've only seen it in one place.
I know somebody's seen it this week in our town in one location that I didn't know had it either. So
Okay.
it is starting to show up, so maybe they are a small craft distillery, which we can't talk about that because we're going to talk about it when?
On Friday on Second Pour.
Which means you guys continue to be geeky this weekend. We will see you
On Friday.
on Second Pour for a Roknar review.
Yep. Until then, cheers, guys.
Yeah.